Bet you never thought you'd be checking out wastewater treatment plants, did you? Well, welcome to my world. Wally Waterdrop again. You know, part of those millions of gallons of water that come around time after time in one big cycle, starting at good old Lake Erie, up to residences, businesses, and industries, back down through their wastewater lines, into local community systems, which flow into larger regional systems, that send me to one of 3 wastewater treatment plants. And that's where I'm cleaned and treated, and then released to go back out to the lake. This cycle of mine's a big part of the area's environmental balance. So you can see why a place like this is a very important stop. Our area's 3 wastewater treatment plants are all operated by the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, or NEORSD. They include the Southerly plant in Cuyahoga Heights, the Easterly plant in Cleveland, and the Westerly plant near Edgewater Park. They were all built between 1922 and 1938, and they've been running nonstop ever since. A good thing, since they treat a combined average of 310 million gallons of wastewater every day. Think I'm exaggerating? Well, it's estimated that every person in the nation contributes between 70 and 150 gallons every day to a community's wastewater flow. So, when you think about how many people and businesses are in our area, that's a pretty realistic figure. And when it rains, well, I won't even get into that. Let's just say that depending on the wastewater treatment plant, its location, its equipment, and even the weather, you might see different things happening, but basically speaking, it all boils down to this. The same processes that nature uses to clean streams, rivers, and lakes are all used here, just speeded up and controlled to be as effective as possible. And those natural processes include physical, biological, and chemical. Sounds simple, huh? But although it's second nature to nature, doing it right in this environment calls for a variety of sciences to work together. Not just biology and chemistry, but also engineering, hydraulics, and electronics are all part of the mix. And every stage of the process calls for careful monitoring, testing, and control to make sure that what goes in comes out in a form that doesn't upset our environmental balance. Wastewater treatment involves 4 main processes: preliminary treatment, primary treatment, secondary treatment, and treatment of the solids that are removed along the way. In preliminary treatment, the first step, the wastewater passes through steel bar screens as it enters the treatment plant. The screens trap and remove large floating objects like rags, woods, plastic, and all the other big stuff that gets into the wastewater stream. Still carrying solids like sand, grit, and gravel, the water then hits the grit chambers. These tanks, which each hold over 1 million gallons of water, slow the water enough to let more solids drop to the bottom. Now the wastewater moves into primary treatment. Here, sedimentation, or settling tanks, hold the wastewater for up to several hours. That gives time for solids that are suspended in the water to settle to the bottom. At the same time the solids are settling, there's lighter stuff like grease and oil rising to the top. That's where surface skimmers take over to remove those materials. By this time, lots of solids have been removed, but others are still there, some suspended, others dissolved in the water. That's where secondary treatment starts, and it involves the science of biology and a bunch of very tiny but hungry guys called microorganisms. In natural waterways, microorganisms like protozoa, fungi, algae, and bacteria all love dining on dissolved solids. As they eat, they accomplish something called biological conversion that transforms the dissolved solids into suspended solids. And once solids are suspended, they can be removed. Secondary treatment uses these same microscopic mega munchers and increases how well and how quickly they do their conversion thing. Some plants begin secondary treatment with trickling filters. This calls for wastewater meals to be sprayed over beds of loosely packed material where the hungry microorganisms wait. They eventually get so full, they fall off the beds and are removed. other microorganisms then take their place. Whether or not trickling occurs, the next step in secondary treatment is the activated sludge process. You combine wastewater and microorganisms, then add oxygen, which makes the organisms multiply, and mix well for a few hours. The mixture then goes to a secondary sedimentation tank. The microorganisms and the now suspended solids are given time to settle to the bottom. Then they're removed. The final step in secondary treatment is chemical treatment. First, we add a form of chlorine to disinfect the wastewater. This kills most of the organisms that can cause disease. But since chlorine is toxic to fish and other water life, we also make sure to dechlorinate and take these chemicals back out. And once that's done, the effluent or treated wastewater is released back into the waterways. Okay, so now you know the preliminary, primary, and secondary treatments I go through. Now, let's see what happens to the solids that get removed. Remember those bar screens that get first crack at me during preliminary treatment? Well, the trash and rags they remove are sent to a hopper and then delivered to a sanitary landfill. In the preliminary grit chamber, any sand and gravel that settles gets washed, then it too gets put in a landfill. The solids that settle in the bottom of the primary and secondary tanks are moved into pipes that take them to solids handling. These are sometimes called biosolids, but the poetic business term is sludge. Since our 3 plants treat over 300 million gallons of wastewater daily, we're talking a lot of sludge. So the first priority in sludge handling is to make the total amount smaller by removing as much water as possible. How thick is the perfect sludge? Well, after secondary treatment, solids usually account for about 1 to 2% of the total sludge volume. The ultimate solids goal is about 40% of the volume. Treatment plants use a variety of techniques to reach that goal, like reactors, which use intense heat and pressure to cook the sludge, or centrifuges that whirl the sludge around to remove excess water, or other ingenious techniques that use everything from pure gravity to chemicals to pressurization to remove the maximum amount of water. When the sludge has been thickened as much as possible, it's then incinerated in a way that controls both the gas that's released and the ash that results. Sometimes the ash is temporarily held in these special lagoons, but it all ultimately makes its way to a landfill. So, that's pretty much the big picture. You'll learn a lot more about wastewater treatment if you tour one of the sewer district's plants. Me, I'm off to go hang out in the lake for a while. But don't worry, I'll be back again, and 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 again.